Keeping time is at the core of every game, and Minecraft is no exception. But how does Minecraft actually handle time? And what would happen if time was to overflow and go negative? We'll start in Minecraft 1.21.11, the latest versions of recording. I've modified the debug screen to display all time related values so we can see exactly what's going on. First we have DayTime. This is essentially the main tick timer, the value that controls whether it's day or night, and the one changed by the time set command. Then there's GameTime, which tracks how long the world has existed since it was created. And finally current day, which isn't stored directly, it's calculated entirely from DayTime. Using the time set command won't help us overflow anything, because it simply assigns a value instead of adding to it. It also resets the day counter, so if you ever use that command in survival you're resetting your Minecraft day counter. One way to overflow the value is by using timeout. This command does add time to the clock with the maximum being 2 billion at once, basically the 32-bit integer limit. But this will take far too long, like 1000 hours if it runs in a command block loop. Let's do the math and see how long it would take for the timer to overflow naturally. Minecraft runs at 20 ticks per second, and every tick increases the timer by 1. A 64-bit long can hold about 9.2 quintillion values. That means you would need to keep a world running for roughly 14.6 billion years for the timer to overflow naturally. Sleeping through nights would reduce the time it takes a lot, because sleeping doesn't reset the timer, it only adds to it. But still it would take roughly half of that, so realistically this limit is impossible to reach without external tools. So, instead of waiting a few billion years or add time manually 4.3 billion times, I'll just use an MBT editor to set the timer just a few hundred ticks below the long limit, and finally see what happens when Minecraft time actually overflows. Now let's load the world back up. You can already see that daytime is sitting right before the long limit. In about 20 seconds it should finally overflow. And there it is. The moment it flips the world suddenly jumps from day to night. But the real question is, did anything actually break? Let's run some experiments. First thing to notice is that the day counter has gone negative, because it's calculated directly from daytime. Now let's try sleeping. Sleeping still sets the time back to morning just like normal, no issues there. What about adding time with commands? That works fine too. The clock moves forward correctly, even though the underlying value is negative. Lighting entities behave normally, and hostile mobs still spawn at night exactly like they should. Next, let's see if crops will grow. I let the world run for a while without touching the random tick speed to speed up crop growth, and crops continue to grow at the usual rate, so farming and random ticks don't seem affected at all. So at least in the latest version Minecraft appears to function perfectly fine with negative time, as if nothing unusual happened, at least from everything I've tested. If you tried this yourself and managed to break something I didn't, definitely let me know in the comments. And the reason for this is actually pretty simple. Most time-related math in Minecraft doesn't care about the sign of the number. The game mainly checks differences and uses modulo operations, so negative values still behave logically. After all, -5 plus 1 is -4, and -5 is still smaller than -4, so math works out. So from the game's perspective, negative time is fine. That was pretty anticlimactic, so let's go back to older versions and hope something actually breaks. Next on the list is Minecraft 1.7.10. You already know the setup, so I'll skip straight to loading the world with the time being set just before the long limit. And right after the overflow something very strange happens, completely different from 1.21.11. First we get the usual flash from day to night, but then it instantly jumps back to day again. And from this point on time starts flowing backwards. The sun and moon now rise from the west and set in the east, and the sky stutters every update, and even game logic is flipped. You can sleep during the day, mobs don't burn in sunlight, but they do burn at night. Other than that though, the game still works perfectly fine. But before I reveal what's actually happening behind the scenes, let's check one more version. Let's check if this occurs in previous versions like 1.5.2. In 1.5.2 we get the exact same behavior as in 1.21.11. After the overflow there's the usual jump from day to night. And then everything continues completely normally, as if nothing happened. Entities behave correctly, sleeping works as expected, lighting updates properly, and we can still keep adding time without any issues. With that, we can conclude that whatever happens in 1.7.10 was introduced after 1.5.2 and fixed before 1.21.11. Which means the problem isn't in the log overflow itself, it must be something specific to how time was handled in that middle era. And to understand that, we need to look at what the client and server are actually doing with the time value. So, what is actually happening in versions from 1.7.10 to at least 1.12.2? The answer is simpler than you might expect. There's a mismatch between how the client and the server handle negative time. On the client side, there is a check that forces time to be positive whenever it goes below 0. That results in adding 1 to a negative number, actually decreasing the timer when it gets multiplied by -1. That single line is what causes the sun and moon to move backwards. Minecraft runs on a server client model even in single player, and all real game logic like mob spawning, sleeping and daylight checks is based on the server time, not the client. And the server handles time exactly like in 1.5.2 and 1.21.11. It happily continues counting into negative numbers with no issues. So what you're seeing is a desync. The server is at a negative time and running normally, and the client forces that value back to positive. The result is inverted day and night and the sky moving in reverse. If we simply remove the client side check, everything instantly behaves like the other versions. Here's me fixing it in real time, and you can see the immediate jump from night to day as the timers sync back together. I still don't know why the negative time clamp was ever added only to the client, and then quietly removed again in later versions. But that tiny inconsistency is the entire reason time appears to break in this era. Just to cover everything, let's take a quick look at beta 1.7.3 and release 1.0. In both versions I'll be speeding up time directly in the code, since commands don't exist yet. Beta 1.7.3 behaves exactly like modern Minecraft. Nothing breaks when time overflows, and the game keeps working perfectly fine after the sudden day to night jump. As a side note, sky rendering is very different here. So with time running at 5 times speed, the night sky looks incredibly creepy, almost like it's rolling over itself. As for release 1.0, I was hoping the moon textures would finally break, since this is the first version that introduced different moon phases based on daytime. But even here the behavior is identical to beta 1.7.3. After the overflow, everything still works normally. I was really hoping to see the old bedrock style broken moon, but it just doesn't happen in Java. Most likely that's because Java safely clamps all UV values in the rendering path, and moon size is completely static. In old bedrock the size was probably dynamic, or there was some shader blending trick, which caused those spectacular glitched moon effects. And finally, let's return to 1.21.11 to test the other time value, GameTime, and see what happens when it overflows. Once the overflow happens, absolutely nothing seems to change. I have already tested this with positive daytime as well, and the results were identical, so we will continue with both values being negative. The world still works perfectly fine, and it is behaved normally, redstone and pistons function as expected, and even in the nether everything remains stable. This timer appears to be used mostly for internal tracking and logging, not for core gameplay logic. I have also checked the stats screen to see if anything was wrong, and it appears to track everything just fine. And that's what actually happens when time goes negative in Minecraft. Even when a core system like the world timer overflows, everything keeps working as if nothing happened. The only real exception was the strange client-server desync between 1.7 and at least 1.24, where the client tried to fix negative time while the server didn't, creating backwards days, inverted nights and sky stuttering. Outside of that, Minecraft's time-related math is built in a way that doesn't really care whether time is positive or negative. As for game time in other versions, the result is identical to 1.21.11. Nothing breaks, you can't even tell it has overflowed. If I ever cover this topic in Bedrock Edition, there we can see some visual bugs related to the moon I've mentioned earlier. The problem is that Bedrock is far harder to modify and experiment with compared to Java. If you'd like to see a Bedrock version of this experiment, or if you know any other systems that break with negative time, let me know in the comments. Overall, the results were pretty underwhelming. But at least we have seen just how surprisingly robust the game's tick system is.